Hi everybody, it's Crystal, and I am officially here to do my labor and delivery story. I'm sorry that it's taken me so long to get it done, but I have had my hands full with little guys, and this little guy doesn't want to be quiet, so he's going to have to hang out on mommy while I do this video. Okay, so I'm going to try to be somewhat quick. This is probably going to be a little bit of a long video, just because it was a long journey. So first off, I just want to say that the last video that I made outside of my introduction video of the boys was my 36-week appointment update video. And in that video, I said that we were going to be induced on Wednesday, January the 8th. I had an appointment for Monday the 6th of January to go in for monitoring to check the boys' heart rate and make sure they were moving the way they were supposed to. Basically, they just wanted to see positions and all of that kind of stuff to see if we were okay to do a natural or vaginal birth. So starting on Monday, January the 6th, Josh and I got up that morning, and of course I've been on bed rest, and so I actually got up and took a shower, and I straightened my hair and put some makeup on. I was like, oh, I'm getting out of the house. So we went to that appointment, and as we're leaving the house, Josh is like, shouldn't we take our bags? And I'm like, no. And I mean, I'm very serious, no, we're being induced on Wednesday. There's no reason they would do it today. I'm just, So he puts his bags in the car, and I'm just like, no, we're going to be fine. So we go into the appointment, and we only sit in the waiting room for a couple minutes. It's full packed, and I'm thinking, oh God, this is going to be hours that we're here. But it wasn't. Sorry, I'm trying to turn, little guy. There you go. So I get called back to do a urine sample and do my blood pressure. So at this point, most of you know, it's really hard for me in the last month or two of pregnancy. It's really hard for me to go pee, to actually release my urine. It was very, very difficult for me, that last part of pregnancy. So I went back there and struggled to get any sort of pee out, and I did manage to do it. And then as I'm setting my cup on the countertop, I knock it off. I don't know how I did it, what I did, but I knock it off, and it spills all over me, all over my pants, and I get upset. I'm start to cry. I'm just so freaking frustrated. Here I am, 9 months pregnant with twins. I'm trying to bend over on the floor and clean up my piss from the floor. So I've thrown, paper towels on the floor, and I'm using my foot to kind of get it. So I come back out, and I tell the lady, I'm like, look, I just spilled my pee all over me. She was like, oh, I can tell by your face that you got upset. And I was like, yeah. She's like, let's take your blood pressure. I'm like, great. It's going to be high. So it was really high. It was 163 over 123 when she took my blood pressure. So after that, I told her, I was like, well, I think I can squeeze out a couple drops, because she told me, she was like, I only need a drop or two. I was like, okay. So I go back in, and I managed to get out a little tiny bit of pee for her. So, she doesn't even give me a chance to go back and sit with Josh out in the waiting room. She's like, okay, we're going to put you in this other room. So I grab Josh. We go back in. They hook me up for monitoring. I think we're in there for 20 minutes. And everything looks okay. The boys' heart rates are fine. They are moving about the right amount of times that they're supposed to. And then one of the doctors comes in. The one that I didn't like, the one that was telling me that they were petite and that, we can't teach them anything except we can prepare them for the zombie apocalypse. So that doctor comes in, and I actually feel better about him because I had talked to my midwife, and she kind of explained his personality to me. So I felt a little bit better about seeing him. So he comes in, and he's like, so, are you ready to have babies? And I'm like, yeah, on Wednesday. And Josh just tells everybody, it's so funny because he's sitting over here in the corner, watching my face as I don't get it yet. And the doctor is like, no, today, you're not going home. And I'm like, what? So, I just instantly, I'm like, oh my gosh, today is the day, which I thought was so funny because my days of having the boys, I had picked December 31st and January 6th. So how ironic, I think, or not ironic, but how funny that on January 6th is the day that everything starts. So yeah, he comes in and he tells me, and he's looking at positions of the babies, and we see that Armor is, of course, head down, and that Ronin is still transverse with his head on my side and body kind of stretched out at the top. So he, the doctor asked me, he's like, do you want to do cesarean? And I was like, no, I really want to try for vaginal birth. And he's like, well, okay, so he's kind of, I think if Ronin had been completely breached, then we would have done a cesarean. But he was willing to let me try, and I was very grateful for that. So yeah, he tells us immediately. He's like, "Okay, you guys need to head over to labor and delivery," and I'm just like, "Oh my God, this is happening." So he's, says they'll call over there and let them know that we're heading over. So he leaves the room, and I call Josh's mom, and I'm like, "It's today. It's happening today." So I call her, and she's like, I can just hear the panic and excitement in her voice, and so I call her, and then we, get up, and here I am, like, covered in pee. So we managed to make it halfway across the hospital. Like, it was a long trek, and I was really uncomfortable. So after that, we walk through the hospital, and then my sister-in-law calls, and she's excited. And so the phone calls start happening at this point. People are starting to learn that it's happening, like, today. So we make it into labor and delivery. I go into the area where you, like, check in and sign in and everything. And I'm just like, my adrenaline is pumping through my body. I'm like, oh my God, we're having babies. So I was really excited and nervous. And so right after I got done doing my sign in and paperwork and all that stuff, they had a room for us, like, immediately. Like, they didn't even have a bed in it yet. So we went in there, and Josh and I are standing there just staring at each other like, oh my God, this is gonna happen. So I start making a few more calls. I call my real mother, of course, and she, calls my sister and my brother and all of that kind of stuff. And then, so we get, and I text my best friend, Anna. I am just like, because I know that Jennifer, my sister-in-law, was going to call all of the girls or text them or somehow let them know who was at my baby shower that it's happening. So, but I text Anna just because, I just had to. So I text her, and she's like, oh my God. And at that point, the bed gets wheeled in. I put the phone down, and things just kind of start happening. The nurse comes in. They start asking me questions. I get undressed. I put a hospital gown on. They put the IV into my arm. They start me on fluids. Josh's mom arrives probably like within 30 minutes. She's there. And so I send Josh away. I don't send him away. He goes away to go and get all of our bags and stuff like that. So, and I tell him to get some lunch, and, it's going to be a while. So, okay, sorry, my brain's getting discombobulated. And I'm going to have to pause. I'm going to have to stop this like every 10 minutes and then put them all together so that it's not a super giant long thing for my computer to handle. So anyway, okay, we're in the room. Josh's mom comes in, and Josh leaves. So the nurses are, again, they're putting my IVs in, asking me all kinds of questions and yada, yada, yada. And then I think like maybe 30 minutes later, my sister-in-law arrives. And and then shortly after that, Josh arrives back to the hospital with all of our bags. And then, so for the first three, so that was around 3 o'clock. It was actually exactly 3 o'clock when we got into the room. And then, okay, sorry. So yeah, we get into the room exactly at 3 o'clock. And from about 3 o'clock to 6 o'clock is how long it takes for them to get both boys on the monitor continuously for an extended period of time. So before they can give me any medicine or do any sort of stuff for induction, they have to monitor the boys and make sure that everything's okay. So between Ronin being a ninja in my belly and being really hard to track, and my bladder being horrible and me feeling like I have to seriously pee like every 15 minutes, it was a process. Literally a process. So we finally, after about 3 hours, we had a period of time where they were able to keep both boys on the monitor, and they were seeing that everything was okay, and they weren't stressed out. Although there was one period of time where Ronin's heartbeat dropped, and the nurse came flying into the room, and then she called another nurse, and she's like, we lost baby B, and she was kind of freaking out a little bit, and it freaked me out. And then all I could think in my head is, oh my God, they're about to make me have a cesarean. Josh isn't here. I was kind of freaking out, but they wound up getting him back on track, and then everything was okay. So after that, I want to say it was about 6 o'clock, they came in, my midwife came in and checked me down below, and I was so surprised that what progress my cervix was already at, because I just wasn't sure if there was anything happening down there because I'd been having contractions, but I wasn't sure if it was doing anything. So when she checked me, everyone was really surprised that I was already 80% effaced, thinned out, and I was at 1 centimeter, which we knew that. But so just being thinned out was great. I was like, okay. So after that, she brought me Cytotec, which was an oral tablet that I took 2 of. And basically, it's a ripening. It ripens the cervix and kind of prepares the cervix for labor. So she gave me that, and I started having some mild contractions, nothing bad. I was just kind of like, oh, there's a contraction, like it was nothing bad yet. And then they came in, I want to say it was like 9 o'clock, maybe 10 o'clock. And I think it was like 9. And she checked me again, and I was at 90% effaced, and at 2 centimeters. So she said, okay, well, we're going to go ahead and put in the balloon Foley, whatever it is. Basically, it's like this little thing they insert into your cervix, and they fill it up with fluid, like saline solution, and it makes a bubble on the inside of your cervix. And then there's a little like bubble on the outside, and they fill both of those up, and it's supposed to help your cervix open up. So that was really uncomfortable getting that put in. It was really uncomfortable. So they said that they like to keep it in for about 12 hours. And I was like, okay. So after that, I want to say it was about 11 o'clock. Everybody left, and it was just Josh and I. And we were watching a video on his iPad, and I started to have pretty intense contractions. Like I was really having to focus through them, breathe through them. And so midway through the show, I was like, I don't even know what's happening. I can't focus on it. We're going to have to watch it another time. And he's like, okay. So the nurse comes in. She's like, why don't we go ahead and give you an Ambien? That way you can get some rest tonight and try to sleep through these contractions so you're well rested for tomorrow because it's already been a long day. And I'm like, okay. So she gives me the Ambien, and I don't sleep. I might have dozed off a few times, but between the Ambien making me feel weird and not being able to sleep, and having to get up every like 20 minutes to go pee and then get back on the monitor and all this other stuff, I wasn't able to sleep. And so I want to say it was about 3 o'clock in the morning. Josh is stirring and tossing and turning on this tiny little couch thing that he's supposed to sleep on, and he's 6'2", so it's not an easy thing for him. So I finally am like, why don't you go home? There's nothing happening right now. Go home and get some rest in a real bed. We're going to have a long day tomorrow. So he leaves. And at that point, I'm wide awake. I'm like, okay, I'm good to go. So I make a YouTube video at that point, a very short one. And I made 2 of them actually. And each time I tried to make them, I would have a contraction at the end. And so I would stop. And then I tried to post it, but the wireless in my room was really, really spotty. So it never posted. So again, I'm sorry I wasn't able to warn everybody that I was in labor, because I said that I would. So at about 5 o'clock in the morning, I start to have more intense contractions. And at this point, I start to get a little nervous that things are going to happen faster. And I guess because Josh is not there, because I told him to go home, I start to feel nervous that he's not there, that something's going to happen and he won't be there. So like around 6:30, 7 o'clock, the shift changeover is happening. The nurses and new midwife and everybody's coming in and out. So it's kind of an active time. And I'm having contractions. And my nurse comes in and she unhooks me from the IV. She's like, why don't you take a shower, freshen up, that'll help you feel better. And so I do. I get up, I go in there, I take a shower. I feel good, but the shower is not very hot. So it's kind of like not that great, but it was a shower. So I did that. And so I did feel refreshed. So I get back in bed and I feel re-energized. And I have something to drink. And then, let's see. So I have something to drink. And then I text Josh and I say, hey, my contractions are starting to be more intense. What time are you coming back? Because I was getting nervous. So, and then at that time, I think it was right after 7 o'clock, the nurse, my midwife comes in. She's like, let's check you. And so she gets, in there and checks the balloon, and she pulls on it, and it like partially comes out. So she's like, oh, okay, well, we're going to go ahead and take this out because, you're where you're supposed to be. So I'm like, okay, that was less than 12 hours. I'm excited about that. So she pulls the balloon out, which was uncomfortable. And at that point, I'm still at 90% effaced, and I'm dilated to 5 centimeters. And then, so after she pulls it out, I feel so much relief. I really do. I feel a ton of relief. I mean, I'm still having the contractions, but the having to pee feeling was a little bit better. And then, oh yeah, I forgot to mention, like, before I took my shower and all of that, like, I'd gotten up and I had asked the nurse, this was probably about 5 o'clock in the morning. I was getting concerned because I couldn't pee. Like, the last couple times I'd gone to the bathroom to go pee, nothing came out. Like, I literally, at that point, I was in the bathroom sitting on the toilet in tears because I felt like my bladder was going to explode and I just couldn't release any fluid. So she says, no, it's normal. It's because of the balloon and because your baby is so low. So, and I guess, like I said, at 5 o'clock, I'd gone in there and I was walking to the toilet and I felt like a little bit of peeing sensation. And so I just stood there and I peed all over myself and the floor. Like, I was like, okay, I can't sit down. I started to like dribble a little bit, and so I just let it go. And I didn't let everything out, but I just stood there and I peed, and I was like, oh my God. I felt so amazing. I still didn't feel back to my normal self, but I felt better at that point. So, and then I'm like, I took my gown off, I threw it on the floor, and I'm like wiping everything up, and I'm just like, I'm so sorry I peed on the floor. But it was like a tile floor in the bathroom with the shower and everything, so it was like, it's no big deal. So so yeah, that happened. So after they take the balloon out, I feel relief, I feel better. Let's see. Oh, Josh calls me and he's like, I'm getting some breakfast, I'm letting the dogs out, so then go to the bathroom, and then I'm heading up there. And I'm like, okay. And so at this point, Josh's mom arrives in the morning. And then, like, a little bit later, Josh's sister arrives, like an hour later. So by 9 o'clock in the morning, everyone is back. Not everyone. Anna's not there, but my sister-in-law and Josh and my mother-in-law are there. So, so at that point, I'm feeling good. I'm having contractions. They're not intense. Not as intense as they were that early in that morning because the balloon is out. So, okay, so yeah, by 9 a.m. everyone is back. Everyone as in Josh, my sister-in-law, and my mother-in-law. So at that point, I'm having contractions. They're not intense yet, but they're starting to get more uncomfortable. So I ask, I guess it's around 12. I asked my midwife or the nurse, I don't remember who it was, I asked them, I said, at what point should I ask for the epidural? Because we already knew that I was going to get one, but I wanted to labor as long as I could on my own until I got to the point where I couldn't. So she said, basically, when you get to the point where you can't sit still through your contractions, that's when you need to ask. And I was like, okay. So I think it was about 2 or 3 o'clock whenever the contractions got really bad. Like, I think from the point when I had asked when I should ask, they were starting to get really uncomfortable. And then through the next 3 hours, it was just, they got really intense. And then when they did get intense, they got intense super fast. Like, I mean, they started getting intense. So at that point, I was up out of the bed and I wasn't on the monitors, and I couldn't lay in the bed. So I was up, I was walking, I was swaying, Josh was rubbing my back, I was using a hot pack, a rice hot pack. I had called the nurse in, and I was like, I'm ready for the epidural. So, and it took them a little bit, not a long time. I would imagine it was only like 20 minutes or 10 minutes for them to get in the room. But those 10 minutes of those hardcore contractions, when they, like, because at that point, when I was already up out of the bed, they were bad. So I asked the nurse to come in, and she's like, okay, we'll send him in right away. And it's like, once I knew that I was going to get the epidural, it's like the contractions just, like, they kicked my ass. At the last part, before the guy came in to do the epidural, like, I was literally, like, in the bathroom, backwards on the toilet, sitting there, like this, just, I mean, I was in some pretty intense pain, and Jennifer is like back there like rubbing my back, and Josh is like, oh my God. So yeah, the guy comes in to do the epidural, and I'm just gonna say, holy crap, trying to sit still through an epidural when you're having back-to-back contractions. Like, oh, it's funny too, because at that point, like, before the epidural guy came in, like, Anna had gotten there, and like, she walked into me like just full on hardcore contractions. Like, she just was like, you know, she was like looking at the screen, and my contractions were like all the way up to the top of the screen, just like a line across. That's the thing, is because they earlier in the morning, I guess after 9 or whatever it was, they started me on Pitocin. So that's why the contractions got so intense. But the monitor, the contractions were just straight across. There was no, like, dip, anything. It was just, so that was, yeah, sitting through, trying to get an epidural and be still was absolutely excruciating. It was the most painful experience I could ever recall. you know, you're sitting at the edge of the bed, you're having to like relax your body, and I'm just like, it was bad. And then the guy, I forget what his technical name is, the guy that does the epidural. I don't know that he's an anesthesiologist. I don't know. But he's like asking me all these questions. And like at one point at the end, I'm just like answering them, and I'm like screaming my answer to them. No, yes, no. You know, I just was like, oh, please hurry. So finally the epidural was in. And that was very relieving. And it wasn't like instantaneous. It took a little bit for the numbness to like really set in. But oh God, it was such a relief. Oh gosh, the contractions were bad. But I was proud of myself. I really was. I mean, I had contractions at 11 o'clock the night before that lasted all the way until, you know, 3 o'clock, 2 o'clock the next day. So I feel like I was able to labor a long time and get my feel of labor and birth and all of that stuff, or, you know, labor. So got the epidural and I was great. I felt really good. And at that point, Anna had come, and then also they, because my blood pressure was so high still, like all through, you know, ever since I got there the day before, my blood pressure was really, really high. Anytime I got up to go to the bathroom, my blood pressure was really high. The blood pressure cuff was on my arm the whole time I was in bed, and so it would take my blood pressure like every 15 or 20 minutes, I think it was. And if I wasn't laying on my side, then it was through the roof. So that was concerning. So they did tell me, they're like, you know, once you get the epidural, we are going to have to give you magnesium. And that's basically just, it was to keep me from having a seizure or having a stroke through labor. So she did tell me, she was like, it's probably going to make you feel bad. It's going to make you feel like I have the flu. And I was like, oh, great. So they wound up giving me that. So towards the evening time, I just was feeling really yucky. I mean, I really was. I felt so hot. I felt like I was just burning up the entire time. And I felt kind of crappy. I mean, I was still in good spirits and I was happy because obviously I wasn't in pain anymore. But I felt bad. And then, so evening time comes around, and it's probably like 7, 8 o'clock, and my friend Sarah arrives. And then around 9 o'clock, I think my mom finally arrived, and my sister and her boyfriend. And then at one point, my brother-in-law came up and brought my niece, and she was so hoping to have, you know, that I would have had the babies already. She's only 5 or 6. No, she's 6. So she was kind of disappointed that there were no babies for her to see, and she had school the next day. So, let's see. So yeah, at that point, you know, the contractions are happening. I am feeling kind of yucky from the magnesium, and everyone's just kind of hanging out and joking and laughing and talking. It was really a great experience, and just very comfortable with my friends and family there supporting me and Josh through the experience. Let's see. And then, so the midwife comes in. So the midwife comes in and she's like, I'm going to check you. And I think it's like 9:45, almost 10 o'clock. I have to go back and check Facebook because I actually posted it out on Facebook after this. But she comes in to check me, so everybody clears out of the room except for Josh. And she checks me and she's like, oh, wow. She's like, you are ready. You are 10 centimeters. You're fully dilated. You're ready to go. And so I'm like, oh my God. At that point, I feel so much relief and excitement that, you know, the laboring process is over and it's going to be time to push soon. So, so I'm excited, and, you know, they leave the room, and our, you know, friends and family come back in, and everyone is just so, the energy in the room is so exciting because everyone knows that it's coming soon. And, so everybody's just excited and talking, and, you know, so then like 20 minutes passes, and at this point I do post on Facebook. I post like something like, I'm at 10 centimeters and we're about to push. And then about 20, maybe 30 minutes later, the nurse comes back and she's like, okay, it's going to be a little bit longer. She was like, it's a really busy baby night. There's another woman who's going to have a cesarean, so you're going to have to labor down. And I'm like, what? Labor down? And she was like, you know, we're going to let you sit here and have contractions and push the baby down further until we can get you in the room. And part of that was because I was going to be delivering in the operating room. So not only did we have to have my doctor, but we also had to have my midwife at the same time. And like I said, there was a busy baby night. I think there were 5 women in labor at the same time as I was. So they were running all over the place. So I labor down. I go for, I want to say it's another 30, 45 minutes. And then, so finally my nurse comes back in. Well, she comes in and checks on me and everything. She comes in, she's like, okay, we're going to go ahead and we're going to start doing test pushes. The cesarean is starting right now. And so as soon as the baby's out, she's coming this way. And I was like, okay, awesome. So everybody clears the room. And actually it's so funny because nobody left the room until the nurse said, okay, everybody but the person who's going to be here for delivery needs to go. So I was thankful because I was just like, you know, everyone's so excited and I wanted them to be there, but then again, I didn't want them to be in the room. And so I was really grateful. I think she could tell by the look on my face that she asked everybody to leave. So they all look at me like, oh no. And then, we give hugs and everybody leaves. And Jennifer, my sister-in-law, stays and Josh stays. So my nurse, Catherine Ann, comes over and she's like, okay, they get me, my legs all up and everything. And she's like, we're going to do test pushes. And, we're going to push on the contractions. And so I could still feel the contractions, not like severe, but I could feel them. So the first push that I did, like I moved him down, like she was like, oh, wow, you moved him really far. So we continued to do test pushes. And in the middle of that, his head was right there. Like she says to Josh and Jennifer, oh, you can see his head. Do you want to see? And they both come like right around. They're like right in front of me and they're looking. They're like, oh my gosh. So they can see him. They can see he has hair. And then at one point she asked me, she's like, do you want to feel him? So I was able to like reach my hand down there and feel his head. And I was just like, oh my God, this is so surreal. So I don't do a ton of test pushes because he is so close that it's like if I push any further, he's going to be out. So it's about 11:30, and the midwife finally comes in. She's finally there, and she's fantastic. She's amazing. And oddly enough, she went through infertility and had twin boys. So, but she delivered them both vaginally. So she gives me this little pep talk on how, I'm going to do great, and she had twin boys and all of this other stuff. And so I do I think 2 pushes with her, and she was like, okay, you're ready. We need to go to the operating room now because you're crowning. So they get my bed ready to wheel me down to the operating room. And as we're doing that, they're like, okay, how do you feel about having 2 different birthdays? And I was like, no. Normally I would have think that was so cool or so fun and so neat, but I, in that moment, was like, absolutely not. They're going to have the same birthday. I carry them together all this time. They're going to have the same birthday. So they're wheeling me down to the operating room as I'm crowning, and we get in there, and everyone's just kind of taking their time because we're waiting on a baby, and we're waiting for it to be midnight. So I literally held him. I think it was 10 minutes by the time we got in there and prepped. I had to hold him in for about 10 minutes. And then as soon as it hit midnight, they're like, okay, go ahead and push on the next contraction because by that time it's going to be after midnight. So I did one easy push, and I felt his head come out, and it was like I could feel the pressure release. And then a second later, I kind of pushed a little bit more, and I didn't even have to hardly push, but I pushed him, and I felt his body come out, and then I felt the water come out, and I was just like, I just remember bursting into tears. I was like, oh my God. So it was such an amazing thing to feel. Sorry. So, I pushed him out, and Jennifer and Josh were like, oh my God. And, I just feel the excitement in the room, and they immediately place him on my stomach. And I just remember feeling him and rubbing his little head, and just in complete amazement that I just pushed this baby out of my body. So, it was just absolutely amazing. And he was kind of purple, though. He wasn't breathing. So they let him on my stomach for just a little bit. I want to say maybe 1 to 2 minutes. And then he still wasn't breathing. So they had Josh cut his cord real quick, and then they zoomed off and took him over to the other side of the room. It wasn't that far away, but Josh went over there with him. And, it was a little bit before he was breathing. I think they had to use a little resuscitation thing on him to get him going, but he was stuck down in my birth canal for so long. And so during that time that they're doing that with armor, the doctor is like, manipulating my stomach. He's trying to like get the baby to turn, and then the sonogram machine didn't work for whatever reason, so then they had to go get another one. But he's like pushing my stomach around and moving the baby around, trying to get Ronin to move. And then Ronin wouldn't turn, and so then the doctor like looks at me and he shows me his hand. He's like, and I was like, no, I want you to do this. So he sticks his hand inside of my body, inside of my uterus, to try to turn the baby. And I can feel him. Like, I can feel my stomach. I can feel my lungs being moved, pushed around. Like, I can feel everything. I mean, I can feel the pressure. I don't mean like it didn't hurt me at all, but I can see, like, looking down, I can see my stomach and everything just like being contorted. It was so creepy and so surreal knowing that this guy had his hand inside of my vagina, inside of my uterus, trying to turn a baby. And so he kept grabbing his back. Like, when Armor came out, Ronin just stretched out sideways completely. And so he kept grabbing his back, and then he grabbed his arm. And at that point, he was like, okay, all I'm getting is an arm. We have to do a cesarean. And so, I mean, he tried for a while. He really did. And all I can remember was just saying, oh, thank you so much for trying. Oh, I appreciate it so much. Thank you for at least trying. You know, I was just in such a state of disbelief of what was happening. And so at that point, the whole room just completely transitioned from like regular birth to emergency cesarean. Like, people were being called into the room. They called people in for Armor because he still wasn't breathing at that point. So the room changed really fast, and everything, the mood of the room changed. So then they started pumping me full of medication to numb me even more for the cesarean. And so at that point, everything's not a blur, but everything just happens so fast that finally, as they're like getting ready to cut me open, I hear this little cry from Armor across the room, and I hear Josh. He's like, oh, there you go. And so, you know, he's doing okay. He's pinking. I hear them say he's starting to pink up. And then, and so they put like the sheet up in front of me, and I just remember my whole body shaking like uncontrollably. Like, I literally was like, ugh, because of the medicine and everything that they were putting inside of me. So that was pretty intense. So yeah, the medicine was making me shake really, really bad. And then Josh finally brings Armor over to me, and I can see him. And then my sister-in-law comes over and sits next to me. And I just remember looking at her, and I'm like, have they cut me open already? And she's like, yes. So it was pretty intense. I couldn't feel anything, obviously, thank God. They cut me on my skin on the outside. They cut me up and down. So my incision is not bikini sideways. It's up and down because he was so far up in my uterus that they needed as much room as possible. But they did cut my uterus the regular way. So Jennifer said that watching them do the cesarean on me was completely insane, that they were literally like digging around inside of me to try to get him out. And so Ronin still came out breech from the cesarean head last. They had to pull him by his legs out of my body because he was not coming. He did not want to come out. And so as soon as they pulled him out, there's like a gasp in the room. He was so much bigger than Armor. Armor was only 4 pounds 13 ounces, and Ronin was 6 pounds 2 ounces when they pulled him out of me. And so it was just excitement. The room, my sister-in-law was like, oh, it's so beautiful. And just, you know, he cried really quickly. He was like, wah! You know, he cried pretty quickly. So at that point, I'm just shaking on the table like nobody's business. And they say, well, we can give you a little bit of medicine to help with the shaking. So they gave me medicine for the shaking, and then it made me throw up. So I'm like laying on my back, and I'm like turning my head to the side, try to throw up in this little bag. My sister-in-law Jennifer is like holding this little bag, under me so that I can throw up in that and not on myself. And then so Josh is over there, getting Ronin together. And so finally they bring Ronin over, and I see him, and I guess they were sewing me up, and Josh is like, do you want to hold him? And I was shaking so bad. I was like, no, I don't want to scare him. And I feel bad that I didn't hold him right away, but I was so out of it and messed up on the medicine and shaking that I really was afraid that I was going to scare him. So they got So they got me sewn up, and then pretty quickly they put me back in my room, my laboring room. So when we got in there, my family started coming in like a few at a time to see the boys and see me. And I was messed up. I was laying there just completely out of it. I barely knew who was in the room. But then they finally, they brought the boys over to me, and I guess they were like trying to figure out if I should hold him, and they looked at Josh, and Josh was like, yes, she needs to hold him, because I was still shaking so bad. And it's so crazy, because as soon as, so they gave me Ronin first, because I hadn't held him yet, and of course, you know, as soon as he's like laid on me, I'm just bawling my eyes out. I'm just crying, because it was just amazing, and to, you know, to see his face and to meet him, and just, it was so amazing. But so as soon as they put him on my chest, like my body just stops shaking. It was so weird. It was like I needed them to calm me down. So, you know, I'm sitting there cuddling Ronin, and Josh is cuddling me, and I'm just emotional, and I feel so happy. And then they bring Armor over and put him on me, so then I've got both babies there, and it's just so amazing. Like, I can't even explain the kind of feelings that it brings me. It's just absolutely amazing. So I loved on them, and then, you know, my family was there, so, you know, they loved on them and stuff like that. So then at this point, then things start to get like really blurry for me, because I had not slept. So it's, oh, and they were born at, Armor was born at exactly 12:01 a.m. and Ronin came at 12:25 a.m. So right after midnight on January 8th they were born. So after that, like, you know, friends and family left because they'd been there all night and it was so late. And then I just was delirious after that, because I really had not slept since waking up on Monday, and it's now Wednesday. So I was pretty, like I said, I was pretty delusional and just totally out of it. At about 9 o'clock in the morning, 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning, they moved me out of labor and delivery to postpartum. And I just remember being in there, and like I was so exhausted, and I was nursing and trying to feed them, but I was so exhausted. Like I would be sitting there and my head would drop, and I was just like, oh God, you know, I was trying to be awake, but I just couldn't sleep. I couldn't sleep. There was so much adrenaline running in my body. And because of the magnesium and everything that I was on, and just how I felt in general, I was exhausted. I was hungry. I was tired. You know, the nurse kept coming in saying, you know, go to sleep, try to get some rest. But they had me hooked up. They had these things on my legs because they were still monitoring me for the preeclampsia, because my blood pressure was still through the roof. And so the machine that I was on, every single time I started to doze off, it would go off and alert the nurses, because I guess when I was trying to fall asleep, I wasn't breathing the right way, and I wasn't breathing enough, so it was going off, and so it was waking me up every single time I'd even start to doze off. So that was the number one reason I was exhausted. And so finally they came back in and they said, well, we're going to put you on oxygen. So they wound up putting me on oxygen to help with my blood pressure, to help me stay, you know, breathing. So it was kind of the day they were born, you know, they were born at 12:01, 12:25. That whole day was so exhausting for me. I was so tired. And I couldn't sleep. I don't think I even slept until that night, and that was only, of course, a few hours, because then the boys were here and they were waking up every few hours. Actually, we had to wake them up every few hours to eat, because the first few hours of birth they're so sleepy. So yeah, they were born on the Wednesday, and then like I finally slept on Thursday. Like I said, slept on Thursday. Josh, you know, like was like, you sleep, I'm gonna take care of them. And so that was another reason why it was really hard for me to nurse in the beginning, as being sick, and just, you know, I mean, even like the day before I left the hospital, when the nurse came in that morning and she checked me, she was like, your lung is wheezing. I was like, what now? So my body was just really struggling to get better. You know, the whole time that I was in the hospital, up until like the last week My blood pressure has still been really, really high. My swelling was so bad from all the fluids that they gave me, you know, during labor and through the cesarean. My body held on to all of that. I was a mess. My body was struggling. My body was kind of struggling to keep up and to stay going. But yeah, that's it. That's pretty much my labor and delivery story. It was the most amazing experience of my life. Like I just call it my epic my epic birth story, because I had one baby vaginally and one baby cesarean, and I wouldn't change it for anything. I really wouldn't. You know, a lot of people were like, "Oh my God, I can't believe you had to have two different ways," and I'm just like, it was amazing. It was absolutely amazing. It was epic. I will never ever forget anything about it. And I can't wait till the boys are older one day and they ask, "Oh, Mom, you know, how was my birth?" I'm like, let me tell you how it was. So yeah, it was amazing. If anybody has any questions about it, if I missed something or you think I left something out, or I don't know, if you have any questions, leave them below. I'll try to get back to you. I just, you know, again, it was an absolutely amazing experience, and I would do it all over again in a heartbeat if I had to. So that's it. That's my labor and delivery story. I hope this isn't too long, and thank you all for watching. Bye.